All right. Good evening, everyone, council members, citizens, staff, and everyone else who does not have Elton John tickets tonight. It's good to see y'all here. I don't know what time it starts, but if there's a mad rush for the door, I'll know that it's starting. But it is good to see everybody here tonight. It's my privilege to gavel to order the Tuesday, September 13th, 2022 Mount Pleasant Town Council meeting. Our agenda has been published before everyone. I hope you got a copy of it at the door. We will start with item number 1 with the prayer led by Chaplain Rob Dewey, who also served as a chaplain at Ground Zero for 9/11. He will have an appropriate remembrance for us this evening, and a pledge led by Councilman Carl Ritchie. Chaplain Dewey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The mayor has asked us to take a moment of silence, remembering 9/11. Heavenly Father, most of us do remember where we were 9/11, and we just thank you for continuing to guide our country and lead us, and we thank you for the protection that we have here in Mount Pleasant with the police, the fire, EMS, and all those that look after us, and that you'll put your hedge of protection around them and around us as we continue to walk forward to make this town an even better place. I ask your blessing on this particular meeting this evening, and be with council, mayor, and citizens as we all work together. In your holy and blessed name we pray. Amen. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you both. Item number 3 is approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion, please?
Move for approval, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved as published. Item number 4, public hearings, awards, and presentations. Item A is a public hearing notice, a public hearing to receive input on proposed updates to development impact fees to reflect the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual 11th edition instead of the 10th edition, which we are now using. Yes, ma'am.
That's pretty much what I was going to say.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm Tammy Harness, Deputy CFO, standing in for Marcy tonight. This is a public hearing per South Carolina Code, Section 6-1-330, on proposed changes to the General Development Impact Fees for the town of Mount Pleasant. The General Development Impact Fees are being updated to reflect the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual 11th edition instead of the 10th edition. This only affects transportation impact fees. It does not change the fee amount per trip, only the number of trips per development type, which may impact the overall cost.
Thank you very much. If you are here to comment on that, this is a public hearing separate from our public comments for the town council agenda. You may speak at both. When we are through with public input on this, I am required to hit the gavel to let everyone know that that public hearing is over. If you're here to address that item, please come forward, give your name and address, make your comments, and we do have the clock tonight, 2.5 minutes. Anyone to speak on this public hearing to receive input about the updates to the development impact fees? Going once, going twice. All right, this public hearing is closed. Item B is Business Appreciation Week Proclamation, which will be read by the town administrator, Mr. Eric DeMora, and then we will get an address about the state of Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Good evening. I am joined tonight by Michael Cochran, the president of the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce, and Rebecca Imholtz, the director. And I'll ask you both to please join me here at the podium while I go ahead and read the proclamation celebrating Business Appreciation Week. Whereas the town of Mount Pleasant is a business-friendly community, it would like to show appreciation to the individuals that do business here and contribute to the growth and economic health of our community. And whereas the local economy of Mount Pleasant is stimulated by businesses that create jobs and employment opportunities, allowing citizens to earn money, support their families, and thus reinvest in the community. And whereas the town of Mount Pleasant supports the entrepreneurial spirit by being a community that not only welcomes new businesses but supports them by providing resources and offering assistance throughout the startup process. And whereas the town strives to build and strengthen relationships amongst local entrepreneurs and business owners and create a supportive, open, and encouraging business environment that is inviting and attractive. Whereas the town of Mount Pleasant wishes to showcase and recognize the success of businesses within the community. Now, therefore, I, Will Haney, Mayor of the town of Mount Pleasant, proclaim September 18th through the 24th, 2022, as Business Appreciation Week in the town of Mount Pleasant, with a goal of providing a fresh and ever-evolving atmosphere to remain a competitive, interesting, and desirable destination in which to do business. Thank you very much. Can I present this to you?
Thank you very much.
2 words for us?
Yes, sir, absolutely. Mr. Mayor, council members, and chiefs, directors, and staff, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here. And on behalf of the Mount Pleasant Chamber, our board, our membership, we appreciate everything that you do with us in partnership with the Chamber. I'm going to share a few words with you tonight. This is Rebecca Emholtz, our director. She does an amazing job. We are an all-volunteer organization except for 2 people, and that's Rebecca and our administrative assistant, Tamara. So they help the wheels keep moving. Since last year, we've increased our membership by 20% to 450 members. With an all-volunteer board, we have several standing networking events each month and have special events to bring timely information to our members. Most recently, we held a program with the town addressing workforce challenges with our DEI program that focused on local businesses who successfully hire and train employees with intellectual disabilities. We also had our 3rd annual Know Your Lawmaker event with elected officials, including Congresswoman Mace, members of the Charleston Legislative Delegation, and of course, members of Town Council, to have valuable one-on-one conversations with our members. We had over 75 people in attendance at that event. Biz Where You Live campaign ran from late November of last year through April of 2022. The Mount Pleasant Chamber partnered with the town of Mount Pleasant in this campaign to help local businesses reach and bring in new customers. The Chamber provided volunteers that went to businesses to sign them up for this free campaign. The town of Mount Pleasant helped with the PR efforts, especially on social media. The Chamber held weekly drawings during the course of the campaign to bring awareness and incentives for customers to shop. There were 3 separate initiatives: Shop Where You Live, Dine Where You Live, and Get Fit Where You Live. 150 businesses participated, all for free. PR included TV, print media, social media, and in particular was successful. It was so successful that the Charleston American Marketing Association has made us a finalist for a video that we produced. So we're in the running for a nice award there with those guys. We're going to make this an annual campaign beginning soon, so stay tuned in November with Shop Where You Live, and we look forward to partnering with the town of Mount Pleasant with that program again. The Mount Pleasant Chamber is proud to once again host the now 12th annual Mount Pleasant Business and Community Expo. I was the chairman of that committee when we had COVID hit, so it was a virtual event. So we are back live. It will be next Thursday, September the 22nd. We expect 90 businesses and several hundred attendees. PR has been well underway with several local media and the Chamber running several ads with media partners. We look forward to another successful event showcasing the businesses in our community. Normally, we've had up to 1,200 people at that event, so it's a free, large networking event that we're very excited about. Our sponsors have been tremendous. The Chamber gives back. In 2022, we provided Journey bags with donated items to DSS for children displaced from their homes, volunteered with local organizations such as ECHO, and gave annual scholarship to a local high school senior in memory of businessman Joe Brinson. We also gave over $2,000 to members in the nonprofit sector in the town. One of our newer opportunities is to recognize those in the community that give themselves selflessly with our monthly First Responder Award. We also enjoy sponsoring and participating in Mount Pleasant events that benefit our community, such as the Blessing of the Fleet. We always have a booth there for that. And as a matter of fact, this week, we're going to honor some Town of Mount Pleasant employees, 3 of them, with that First Responder Award. Thank you, Chief Arnold and Fire Chief, for all the help that you give us. It's tremendous what you guys do. You hire hard, and it shows with those awards. The Chamber has a staff that daily responds to questions and provides information to local and not so local folks that are interested in learning about our community. Our Chamber also participates in Town of Mount Pleasant ribbon cuttings. So far, I believe we've had close to 17 this year, well over 13. I think it's approaching the 17 number. And we visit with guest members and businesses in person with our valued Chamber ambassadors to help businesses have the information they need to be engaged and to be successful. That's what we're all about, is engagement and giving people the tools that they need to succeed. It's a tough world out there, but we want to help make that a lot easier. We appreciate our partnership with the Town of Mount Pleasant. In closing, I just want to say thank you for your continued support, and if there's anything that we can do, we'll certainly do that. Go Dogs.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Item C is presentation of the South Carolina chapter of the American Planning Association Award. Ms. Reed.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm very excited to announce this award, not only because it provides the town with a little bit of recognition, staff for all their hard work, but more importantly, the work of the Settlement Community Task Force and all the work that came out of that initiative and that continues to come out of that initiative. So just a little bit of background. This is an award that will be handed out in November at the Fall SCAPA Conference, and it's specific to public outreach and engagement. And when we read about this award, it's pretty competitive. I think they only do it every couple of years, but we immediately thought of the Settlement Community Task Force and what a unique opportunity that was to apply for this award. The Settlement Community Task Force met for an entire year from January to December of 2021. It was 15 members were on that task force from 10 settlement communities east of the Cooper, represented that group. And for an entire year, they met and they talked about things like infrastructure, transportation, drainage, economic disparity, housing, cultural integrity, preservation of their communities, zoning, how it affected their properties, and then property ownership and heirs property and ways that we could improve upon that. At the end of the year, December, out of that initiative came a report of recommendations that was provided to Town Council, and with that, and through the work of a special thank you to Ms. Whitley, the chairman of our planning committee, we continue to make changes based on that report and recommendations. And just a few things that have come out of the work of the task force. You're all familiar with the annexation ordinance to help benefit the settlement communities, the 10-mile historic district designation, which just took place. Drainage issues, we continue to work with the legislative delegation to help and coordinate and improve drainage in our settlement communities. And it allowed us, the work that came out of that report allowed us to apply for a grant through the National Park Service. And our hope is that through that grant we can further do work in the communities that want to participate to help us do surveying and research and different sort of initiative there. But I just wanted to take a minute. And again, a special thanks to Ms. Whitley, Liz Boyles, who was our staff to that initiative and worked very hard throughout the year and continues to work. We've worked very closely with the county and all different agencies to put together this task force and to get where we are now. And I've got a list of all of the members of the task force, but I know some of them are here tonight, so I would like to ask if they are in attendance, if they would mind standing up so we could recognize them. So again, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Item D is longevity awards. Mr. Morrison.
Come on up, Gary. September, please. You can't hide from this. September? Okay, September's not coming up. Good evening, Mayor and Council and members of our community. This evening I have the privilege of recognizing one of our own for 25 years of employment with the town. Gary Ponder is known among our ranks as a remarkably dedicated and seasoned, not old, mind you, co-worker. I really can't say old anyway because Gary is frequently recognized as the guy who hasn't seemed to age in the past 25 years, whereas I am constantly reminded that I look like I've aged 25 in the last 10. So that comes along with the job. What can I say? You got really good genes. By looking at both he and September, you wouldn't probably believe that they had their first grandchild last week or 2 weeks ago. So congratulations on that too. Thank you. Aside from genetics, another great trait Gary has is an immense dedication and perseverance. He's a homegrown Mount Pleasant boy from the old village who has witnessed and participated in the tremendous evolution of our town. Who would have thought a boy working 50 cents an hour summer jobs for Dick Jones in the recreation department would later become a 25-year employee with the town? Gary's handiwork back then could be seen in the form of freshly painted tennis courts and street name obelisks around the old village of the 1970s. 1970s. That's right after I was born, Gary. In his second career here at the town, Gary's public services spanned several divisions and departments. He spent his first year here as a building inspector before he took position in the planning department working for the town engineer. There he utilized his surveying and engineering expertise to assist with projects of all sorts, making him still to this very day a great resource as far as historical knowledge of development goes. When both Gary and I transitioned to the transportation department in 2009, he continued his previous work as well as began managing both projects and programs. He has continued these efforts and taken on others as we evolved into the current department, our EDS department. Gary's steadfast approach to work and mentorship inspires and teaches our next generation of employees the true meaning of public service. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention what I and most people would say is our favorite quality in Gary, and that is his patient, caring, committed, and selfless manner. Countless citizens and co-workers over time have witnessed this, and it's because Gary is such a sincere and supportive man, and we very much appreciate that. We've all been blessed to continually witness this trait in his role as a son, a husband, father, co-worker, and all the other roles that you've had over the past many years. So in the end, Gary, I just want to say on behalf of the mayor and town of council and your fellow co-workers and the citizens here of this town, thank you for your steadfast walk with us, and congratulations on 25 years.
Is that the only longevity tonight? Look at all the people that came out for that. One thing I want to mention that we're not doing tonight but was proclaimed, the recipient or the person who organizes this could not be here, but I proclaimed this Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Christine Schaefer could not be here tonight, but lots of municipalities are doing that. We know many people, some in this room, whose families have been touched by that, so we want to do everything we can to raise awareness. We've put that out through our social media. Item 5 on our agenda is approval of the minutes from the August 9th Town Council meeting and the July 2022 financial statement. Do we
Move
have a
for
motion?
approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, corrections, or amendments? All right, all in favor of approval, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, public comment is item number 6. When your name is called, please come forward, give your name and address. And by ordinance, everyone gets 2.5 minutes. You do not have to use it all, and you cannot yield it, but you get 2.5, and it's on the clock. So, Mr. DeMora, if you'll call out the list, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We have several speakers this evening. I'm going to start off calling up the first speaker, and then every additional person I call will stand just a few feet behind on deck, if you will. First speaker is Daniel Senden, and on deck will be Angie Anderson.
Council members, thank you for your time today. In respect of your time, there's going to be a few people speaking together in a line, as you heard. We are here to express our sincere concerns about the SCDOT plans for 526 at Long Point Road. We're also here to say thank you to the staff members and to the council members that have shown us along the way and helped us already. We certainly appreciate that. as we try to go navigate this difficulty for our neighborhood. Our desire is to help explain to the council members exactly what is being proposed. And as residents of this area, we want to show how it really affects all of us. I think we've got a slide or two, if possible. We have multiple concerns with all the SEDOT alternatives. And if I could ask the audience members, if you're here to show your support, your opposition to the SEDOT plans for our neighborhood, please stand up. Thank you. The first of our multiple concerns is the timeline. The DOT, to be clear, is working towards a final design by the end of this year. They have stated construction could begin as soon as next year. The time for the town and for the public to act on this is frankly now, when we can be involved in the design stage, not when the final design is already in place. The final DOT design should be something that we can all be happy with. We are passionately opposed to alternatives 2 and 6, which call for the construction of a new interstate interchange that is literally located on top of the communities of Grassy Creek and Tidal Walk, and which will further affect Bell Hall and Moultrie Park. That affects 1,200 homes. So this interchange will cause real, lasting, and inequitable harm to our residents. Slide 2, please. This new interchange consists of huge elevated bridges that will concentrate truck and vehicular traffic at our neighborhoods. It would involve condemning homes and taking property from our neighbors, some of which are present today. In addition, trucks would not be required to use these bridges. This is not a truck bridge. It would be open to all vehicles, so there is no guarantee that truck traffic wouldn't continue to use Long Point Road. Over $150 million for improvements that trucks don't have to use and other cars rarely would just doesn't seem to make sense. And I'll stop my comments there and allow the next person to continue.
Understand, sir. On deck, Jesse Githner.
That's me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got it now. All right, thank you.
Council members, thank you so much for your time. My name is Jesse Ginther, 278 River Oak Drive in Grassy Creek. Daniel did a great job, and again, just to honor your time, we want to kind of work together. Unfortunately, the SCDOT has indicated that additional alternatives may not be considered with the timeline that they've presented. The 4 proposals that were made were designed without the impact studies being done, without input from the communities that they affect, and without input from our town here. As residents who live and drive these roads daily, we believe that better options exist, and we should not move forward simply because of an expedited timeline. The SCDOT stated that they're focusing only on these interchange improvements, meaning that the local intersections off Long Point Road will fall to the town and to the county, which also means the town will have real expenses with these proposals. We were told by the SCDOT that this expense is still to be negotiated. Let's see here. While alternatives 2 and 6, which Daniel stated very clearly that we oppose, do reduce the truck traffic off of Long Point Road and in front of the 3 neighborhoods that are on Long Point, it does so at our expense. It elevates it, it concentrates it, and it puts it right in the front of Tidal Walk, Grassy Creek, half of Bell Hall, the whole front half of Bell Hall, and Moultrie. That is, again, 1,188 homes to be specific. We do empathize with the Long Point neighborhoods, and we want to join them in finding a safe, meaningful alternative to this truck traffic. But the answer is not a new interchange at the front of our neighborhoods. This elevated truck bridge will bring both noise and light pollution from fast-moving trucks that are braking in a turn from an elevated position and accelerating down onto 526. That's air brakes, that's exhaust stacks. They've talked about doing even on the elevated portion, a wall, but we know that that sound will come over. It is literally 5 yards from the entrance of both of our neighborhoods, 5 yards. Finally, there are conservation easements and wetlands at the end of Rat Hall Creek that are less than 50 yards from where this interstate or where this proposal is coming. And we know that those will be affected. In fact, they already have trees marked in the marsh on the grass in those areas.
And Craig Anthony, you are next.
Hi, Angie Anderson, 396 Tidal Wreath Circle in Grassy Creek.
Just to reiterate a point that was already mentioned, SCDOT, when presenting last week to the Transportation Subcommittee, made light of the process so far, making it sound like everything was done very high level and that there implied that there was a lot of time to make alternatives. However, during the TV interview that followed the meeting, it was said that any alternatives to the 6 that were already presented were very unlikely. So I just want to point out the discrepancy in that message and the importance in that as well. Slide number 3. All of the current DOT proposals will eliminate the current left-hand turn from Long Point Road onto Bell Hall Parkway at Waffle House. This is a critical entry artery for our 4 neighborhoods and dozens of local businesses. Removing it would cause significant traffic issues for the thousands of residents that use it daily. We believe that a lighted intersection is the best long-term solution for the traffic and safety. We presented several solutions to DOT and would be happy to discuss them with the committee members as well. Slide 4. The 4 neighborhoods contain 1,200 homes, 80,000 square feet of businesses and retail space, 2 schools with 1,500 combined students, one of the largest churches in Mount Pleasant, and Firehouse Number 2. The plan to have all access to and from these properties, businesses, and schools on the already congested Bell Point Drive and Paul Foster Road completely defies logic. Fire Station Number 2 on Paul Foster Road would have significantly limited egress for emergency calls with this proposal. Bell Point Road traffic already backs up onto Long Point Road multiple times a day due to Chick-fil-A drive-through, which we still love, but it still backs up all the way to Long Point, on Bell Point Road back to the Long Point intersection. Trucks from the port often park in the middle of Bell Point Road and Bell Hall Parkway, blocking the center lane while awaiting permission to enter the port. In addition to DOT plan would route inbound and outbound vehicles from all 4 neighborhoods, all of the business around a single small traffic circle at the intersection of Bell Hall Parkway and Paul Foster Road. Paul Foster is already a heavily used corridor due to the 2 schools located on Egypt Road. Oh, that was perfect.
And Mr. Lazarus, you're next. No, you're up, sir.
Craig Anthony, 227 Palmetto Bluff in Grassy Creek. I'm going to pick up where Angie left off. With the increase in traffic on Paul Foster, we are very concerned about safety issues for the hundreds of children running, playing, and bicycling outdoors on our roads, sidewalks, parks, and playgrounds, as well as traveling to and from school on a daily basis. The town will be required to sign an agreement. In conclusion, the residents and businesses of Grassy Creek, Tidal Walk, Bell Hall, and Moultrie Park vehemently oppose all options which include an interstate interchange bridge in our neighborhoods, and we will not accept the closing of the critical left turn entrance to Bell Hall Parkway. The health risks, traffic concerns, and quality of life issues far outweigh any and all of the proposed improvements. We know there are traffic issues on Long Point that will continue to worsen as time goes on. We fully support the SCDOT and our town in finding a solution that works best for the entire community. Together, we can improve the safety and function of this heavily populated area of Mount Pleasant. Thank you for supporting our community.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lazarus, you're up. Mr. Spies, you're on deck.
In typical fashion, I handed some paperwork. One of you guys has my notes, so I'm just going to kind of go off the cuff, which I'm fine with. So this video, we'll run the video real quickly. I just want to give you guys perspective of where we are. This is a 10-second video. That's how close the trucks are, and even this doesn't really tell you how close. This is the current edge of our neighborhood, and when we pan over, this is the entrance to Grassy Creek. And when you look at those maps up there that were shown prior, there's a little black area. That's the entrance. Tidal Walk adjoins right there. Currently, there's 300 feet currently from the edge of the road here. That's a perfect graph. Thank you. To the front of to the first house in the neighborhood. They're talking about the orange lines there about putting an overpass bridge, which is going to decline right at the front of our neighborhood, somewhere in the vicinity of those orange dots. I can't tell you exactly where that is. So we're already 300 feet. This is going to be closer to the homes at elevation with the stated goal of putting trucks. Clearly the trucks don't have to use it, which to me is mind-boggling that you're going to build this bridge for trucks, but you're not really going to require the trucks. But They want that to happen. So if you came up with a worst case scenario, imagine your house being this close, having a bridge put in your front yard, which no one deserves. It's not about not being in my backyard. No one deserves this in their backyard, no one. And that's what they're trying to do. And this has not really been a very open process in our minds. I think we're trying now to educate council and everybody else to get you up to speed. Again, this is the buffer. When you look at this overhead map, it looks like you have all these trees that are existing. This little bit of buffer is the only thing holding back on the noise from our neighborhood currently, and it gives us some sense that we're not sitting on top of the interstate. That's almost certainly going to be gone, and it's going to be gone further down into tidal walk communities. If you go to the next one for me, please. There should be another one. Here, again, the orange line, that's not exacting. I'm not an engineer, I'm just a guy, but this is what I put together. The two dots there, those are the two houses that are slated for eminent domain. They don't tell you that at the meeting. I had to ask to find that out, and I believe one of the neighbors that would be affected by the first house is here today. So imagine that your house is on the list to be taken in their favored status plans, but you haven't been informed. This is the type of process we're dealing with. They don't want to scare people. I think you'd want to be scared even if it's 2 years down the road. I gave you all a piece of paper that was handed out. The highlighted part is their timeline. They are looking to decide this by December, and anything else that they would say otherwise is disingenuous. Thank you.
Chris Coleman, you're up next.
Good afternoon, evening now, council. Paul Spees, 231 Palmetto Bluff, Mount Pleasant, Grassy Creek. My manufacturing facility is at 476 Long Point Road. I drive no less than 4 times a day from Grassy Creek to my manufacturing facility. I cannot get trucks in my manufacturing facility to take customer product back, to get deliveries of raw material. I have employees rear-ended on Long Point Road. I have trucks parked in the median daily because they don't have a TWIC card. A TWIC card is a Transportation Workers Identification Credentials. They can't get on the port without that. It costs a whopping $125. It's good for 5 years, but they got to pass a background check. But on several roads, by Chick-fil-A, everywhere else in the median, we have trucks parked every day. They're not eating. They're waiting for one of their buddies with a TWIC card to get on the port. It's sad. I don't think the port pays a business license like my facility does. So I have sent to DOT, and I have in front of you this map. And I'm not a politician, but I am a consultant and an engineer. And I didn't have to go far to figure out the solve for this problem, because it exists right now in our town. It exists right there at Hungry Neck, 17 and 526. We relieve traffic from that intersection by putting Hungry Neck in and curving it on around to intersect with, Sweetgrass Basket Parkway and on. So what did that do? That took traffic off of 17, gave it another route. This is another route that takes traffic off of Long Point Road. You can see it goes down Shipping Lane to the back gate of the port and on out under an elevated 526, elevated to the same height that it is over Long Point Road currently. That would keep the trucks on the ground. It's ludicrous to think that you're going to build a 40-foot tall bridge for truck traffic when you keep them on the ground. I appreciate your time.
Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Could we remind the audience we're a deliberative body
Yes, I will.
and don't,
Yes,
you're taking time away from other people by clapping.
yes. Please refrain. It's our common practice. I understand the emotions involved, but please refrain. Thank you.
Chris Coleman, 118 Pitt Street. You couldn't get rid of me that easily. I wanted to follow up. Let's go to slide 3, Ms. Barrett. Yeah, I wanted to follow up on the quite contentious meeting on 9/6/22 and talk a little bit about some of the issues that were raised. because those who are on that committee and this council generally need the ability to make decisions. So let's talk about whether a 60 decibel standard is reasonable. What you have up in front of you is a chart I gave you about, I don't know, a year ago now. It shows you that 60 and 55 in North Carolina, Georgia, and South Carolina is the norm. Those are the normal standards. Next slide, please. A national survey of 491 ordinances also confirmed that 60 and 55 are perfectly normal. These are reasonable standards, the standards that most communities choose. Next slide, please. A standard of 85 decibels, as some suggest, is simply not reasonable. 85 decibels is the OSHA workplace standard at which permanent hearing loss can occur. You'd need hearing protection in your own yard to be able to withstand that type of noise. Next slide. There were a number of assertions that you would get sued over this ordinance. Let's take a look at the reality. The Supreme Court of South Carolina has upheld noise ordinances that are less specific and less well-drawn than this one is. Alan Wilson, Attorney General of South Carolina, recently issued an opinion to Berkeley County saying, yep, this looks like a good ordinance to me, and it is not as clear and not as specific as this ordinance. The United States Supreme Court has ruled likewise in 2 different cases. Next slide, please. There are a lot of people, and I understand this. I realize people get worried that their business is going under. Several people thought they couldn't use them. Gala Bakery. Well, they claim they couldn't use their porch and courtyard. They're already using their porch and courtyard, and it's been just fine. They've been a good neighbor. Next slide. Post House, 2015. They were outdoor dining there. There wasn't any complaints at all. Next slide. Post House in 2022 had complaints, but they've worked hard to address them, and those efforts are deeply appreciated. They have recently, they're going to go forward with some serious changes that will help the neighborhood, and I appreciate them very much for what they do. I thank you for your time.
Harmon Lewis, followed by Andrea Lewis.
With your permission, I'll let my lovely wife go first.
Of course.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Lewis. I live at 247 Swallowtail Court. Thank you for serving as our town council members and for working towards an agreeable solution that would benefit our town, individual communities, the port, and residents whom you represent. We're a family of 4, and after my husband retired after serving 24 years in the armed forces, we chose to move to Mount Pleasant. The Town of Mount Pleasant Strategic Plan for 2015 through 2025 states that protecting neighborhoods and community systems is a vital component of your plan. Developing ordinances that promote environmentally friendly building practices are also objectives mentioned. However, alternatives number 2 and number 6 for the Long Point interchange are not consistent with the Town of Mount Pleasant's strategic plan. Questions and concerns that we have are, how is the South Carolina Department of Transportation achieving proactive communications throughout the community if their own representative failed to answer at the Transportation Council last week whether or not the Long Point interchange project would require eminent domain of homes? It has been previously acknowledged that the primary options for the expansion will cause destruction to the first 2 homes in Tidal Walk and likely remove the clubhouse, possibly the pool, as well as the sidewalk along Seacoast Parkway. The diagram that Mr. Lee had presented earlier, thank you for doing that, was very accurate. However, at one of the meetings that we went to, that orange line that he put in there was wonderful, also extended into the sidewalk. And that's why I'm mentioning the sidewalk as well, because it was, when I spoke with someone there, they made it very clear that that sidewalk would probably also be removed, which recently was put in over the last 1.5 years or 2 years. Tidal Walk does not have any open areas available to relocate new construction of our neighborhood pool and clubhouse. The pool is a gathering place for our families to exercise and socialize together, building a stronger Mount Pleasant. Replacing the Seacoast Parkway sidewalk would involve encroachment towards the homes in Bell Hall along Historic Drive, furthering the elimination of trees and areas where wildlife resides what areas that animals rely on, and reducing beneficial green spaces in our neighborhoods. This expansion, with plans number 2 and number 6, will impact the health of our families and community. My husband will continue on. Thank you for your time.
I'm Harmon Lewis of 247 Swallowtail Court. The sidewalk on Seacoast Parkway provides a safe and extensive area for all 3 neighborhoods to exercise. This includes children, teenagers, young families pushing a stroller, all the way up to senior citizens walking their dogs. Research has indicated that the more walkway access neighborhoods have, the healthier the communities are physically, socially, and emotionally. Although ground-based traffic noise pollution to our neighborhood could be mitigated with a sound wall, as we've talked previously, the proposed sky bridge for trucks to join 526 westbound would produce noise pollution that cannot be adequately mitigated and would decrease the quality of life in our neighborhoods. As we understand it, the Long Point interchange currently is the least trafficked interchange from Mount Pleasant all the way to I-26. As such, we ask, why is this interchange so heavily emphasized in advance of the 526 lane expansion project? Lastly, we don't believe that this is a binary decision. That is, expanding access to and from the port is not solely dependent upon using a sky bridge to the front of these 2 neighborhoods and the back of Bell Hall. We urge the council to reject, as it is brought to you, any plan as such. Please support the more than 200 families in Tidal Walk and Grassy Creek and the thousands in aggregate in the area by approving only expansion options that don't require an elevated bridge, on-ramp and off-ramp. If elevated ramps are required, we would urge you to ask the DOT to explore over-water roadways to and on the port property as they exist today. Those types of bridges would not require eminent domain of homes or existing businesses. Let's all be committed to our strategic plan of this town, the vision statement, and the core values that aim to protect our neighborhoods, have environmentally friendly building practices, while being a town that is livable and vibrant, while being great team members with integrity and excellence. Thank you for your time, and I'll also acknowledge that I was sitting at Charleston Air Force Base in 2001 when September 11th happened, and my family went off on 8 other assignments, 4 deployments in support of Afghanistan and Iraq before moving back here to raise our families. So never thought that I would find my own home or neighborhood under attack. So thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Next is Gus Katsanavakis, followed by Marie Rakosi.
Good evening, council members. My apologies, but I did not prepare anything. I wasn't preparing to come tonight and decided to come last minute. So I have a couple of unprepared comments that I wanted to bring up. So first of all, one of the comments made earlier was about the safety. If we were to remove the ability to exit off of Bell Hall Boulevard. When I moved into Grassy Creek 10 years ago, we had a party at my house, and like a welcoming party, and we had a bunch of cars that were parked on the road. And one of my neighbors came over, and they were elderly, and they said, "You know what? All of these cars are preventing a fire truck or an ambulance from getting into my house. My husband has medical problems, and if someone, if he has an issue, then they're not going to be able to get here. Can you kindly move your cars?" And I'm just thinking now, I drive this every morning. I drop my son off at Bell Hall every morning and see what the traffic is like. I leave at 6:55 because at 7 o'clock, if you leave Grassy Creek, you can't get through. Now imagine that one of those exits, of the 3, now we're down to 2 exits. So we might as well just say there's no fire truck that's coming. So that's the biggest issue that I have with this whole thing. And the other thing that we have been discussing is let's talk to SCDOT. They can change this. They can change it. The town hall doesn't have the ability to do anything. And I don't believe that for a second. You very well can tell me if I wanted to build my house and I wanted to build it a certain height, or I didn't want to do it to code or something like that. The town can tell me I can't do that. You guys can do the same thing. Don't give them a fire permit. Tell them you will not defend their fires and see if they're going to be able to build to that port. I really think that you guys have the ability to stop this. It's not dependent on the SCDOT. You guys have the power to do something here. Think about the residents here. There's 1,200 residents that are depending on you guys to stand up for us. Finally, we're talking about building this gigantic overpass, and the SCDOT wants to make it sound like, oh, they're going to put a wall in front of it, and that's somehow going to solve all the problems. Think about what I'm picturing is in front of Arby's, where Bowman is. You have the overpass right there and this big, gigantic cement wall. So is this what we're going to have in front of our neighborhood? We're going to have this big, gigantic cement wall with these trucks flying over with their air brakes and everything. This wall's not going to do anything. This is going to be absolutely atrocious for everyone there. Thanks for your time.
Good evening. My name is Mary Riccozzi. I live at 136 Heritage Circle. I am addressing the 100% increase in permit fees to full-time STR permit holders. I believe the permit fee should be set at an amount that provides a balanced budget. The permit fee was originally set at $250 to provide enough revenue to cover the expenses of the STR program. Comments from commission and committee members mention exorbitant rates being collected by STR owners to justify this 100% increase. When I pay my annual business license, I am charged based on my gross receipts. The more I make, the more I pay. Therefore, we are already taxed based on our income. So if permit fees are to cover the STR budget, I feel that there is no need for this increase. Thank you very much.
Brandon Bruce, followed by Mike Johnson.
Brandon Bruce, 264 Alexandra Drive. Thank you for listening to the STR owners and making a few changes to the ordinance. There are still things that remain unclear and still not in agreement. One of the bigger concerns I have are illegal STRs and the violations for them that are not great enough to deter them to becoming illegal STRs. I know with changes, you can't please everybody, and the town wants to put this behind and move forward. What I recommend from here forward is that if there are any proposed changes to the STR ordinance, to sit down and meet with the Stramp board prior to committee and commission to make collaborative solutions for changes. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, Council, my name is Trey Sedalic, 3403 Hartnett Boulevard.
Mike Johnson with Forsberg Engineering, 390 Hugie Street.
I'm Daniel Etheridge, 1244 Jabbers Drive.
We're here representing the Holiday Farms development that's in front of you tonight. Just wanted to make ourselves available for any questions as the agenda item comes up. And we also have another representative from our partner at Space. Thank you.
Thomas Donaldson, followed by Michelle Whitbeck.
Thomas Donaldson, 226 Molasses Lane. I wanted to speak for a few minutes about the short-term rental regulations. I was at the Planning Commission meeting a couple weeks ago, and even though there was 25 people to express their concerns and another 25 that stayed seated out of politeness for everyone's time, it was a bit frustrating to see it kind of sail through without any further consideration. I think that the language around parking needs to be clarified. As many others have said, I think the fee is too high, but for me the biggest concern is the 15-day minimum. Primarily this ordinance writ large, I think, just fails to consider the side hustle nature that some short-term rental operators treat it as. My wife and I have been operating a short-term rental in Mount Pleasant in multiple capacities for 5 years now, always trying to go above and beyond to follow the ordinances, pay our taxes, make sure we're doing everything right, and a big thank you to Jane with the town, who always communicates clearly to us. But one of the big things with being Airbnb hosts is the ability to do it on our schedule. We had the fortune of purchasing a family home in our dream neighborhood, 2020, 2021. And so, of course, we had to pause renting our short-term rental so we could do some renovations. And under the proposed ordinance, we would have lost our permit. And there's over 100 people in the backlog, and so presumably we would have waited a decade to get our permit back and been completely out all of that income. Luckily, that didn't happen, but now we just welcomed our first child 3 weeks ago, and so naturally we can't have a crying baby in the other room. We've always rented out a spare bedroom in our home. We don't have a four-bedroom rental in Old Mount Pleasant that rents for $500 a night. It's just a side hustle trying to help us afford living in a family home. So we are now worried that we would lose our permit and then find ourselves at the back of the backlog and forever be prohibited from legally operating a short-term rental. So I think that a lot of these issues kind of boil down to the $400 cap, which I think a lot has been made about this notion that there are 70 unused permits out there. But in reality, with the scarcity that's been created by this 400 permit cap, you're just going to have 70 people that rent the bare minimum 15 days in order to keep their cap, and the people that are on the wait list are going to continue to be frustrated by their property rights being infringed. So I don't think it solves the problem, and I think that thing in particular should be scrapped from the ordinance. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Whitbeck. I live at 712 Hibbins Grant Boulevard. My husband and I have been short-term rental owners since 2018. I'd like to ask that you please review each item in this ordinance carefully before passing it. Review it from the perspective of a short-term rental owner. We work extremely hard at this business and hope to pass it down to our children one day. But the way the ordinance currently reads, a permit cannot be passed to another owner. I understand not passing it to another individual who buys the property from us, but I wish that you would discuss the option for us to pass it to a family member. Other types of businesses, even long-term rentals, can be passed down the family to continue operating the same business. I've pointed out a couple of sections in previous meetings where the verbiage on violations needs more clarification. Please take the time to read each violation carefully and determine if it is clearly and fairly written. For example, delinquent payments on taxes or fees can bring on a violation. But how many late payments constitutes a violation? We all miss a payment here or there and pay the late fees, but should this warrant issuing a violation? Another one is revoking a permit if a listing for the short-term rental does not include permit or business numbers. I know that the planning department will call that owner first and give them a verbal warning, but the way the ordinance is written, the town has the right to revoke that permit immediately. Thank you for the changes that have been implemented so far in this draft after listening to numerous short-term rental owners' opinions. To ensure that this ordinance will protect us and our neighbors for a long time coming, please allow short-term rental owners the opportunity to collaborate on any other future changes prior to them being submitted to Planning Commission or committee. It's much easier to collaborate on a draft together rather than after it's written. Thank you.
Bill Maschio.
Bill Maschio, 1319 Lake Mallard Boulevard. Thanks, y'all, for allowing me to come up here and stand up in front of you and tell you how I feel about short-term rentals. Mary mentioned 100% increase for short-term rentals. In the current material you have in front of you, 100% increase. Brandon mentioned getting with Stramp. I don't know how many of y'all know what Stramp is. It's all made up of people that have short-term rentals in Mount Pleasant. We have not been consulted with on a regular basis. We've had a voice, but we've never been called to ask questions from anybody that I'm aware of. Michelle mentioned that if something can't be passed down from family to family. Many of you know that I have a son who has a short-term, that manages my short-term rental. He has a brain injury. He can walk from his house. He can't walk, so he can roll his wheelchair, or he can walk with his cane to the short-term rentals. I got gray hair, guys. I'm not going to be here forever, right? When I pass, I can't let him use that because of the paperwork you have in front of you that says it can't be passed down from family members to family members. So there's a lot of things in the material you have in front of you that I hope that you guys will reconsider what's in front of you. And if it goes back to the people needs to go back to Michelle and Lauren, if it goes back to them, then let Stramp be involved in helping short-term rentals be what they need to be in this town. Let's face it, everybody in this room, y'all, we haven't ever done this before. Short-term rentals is a new thing. So let's work together to make sure it's what the best it can be for the town of Mount Pleasant. Thank you, y'all.
That's all I have, sir.
Is there anyone who did not sign up that would like to speak? Please come forward, give your name and address, and you have 2 minutes.
Laurie Bixler, 144 3rd Avenue. For over 10 years now, I have sent letter after letter to council with my opinions on short-term rentals. I've never been called in. Like Brandon said, I am requesting an alliance of owners of Stramp and citizens to be formed before implementing any of these changes on this currently working ordinance. That being said, I have comments to make, and my comments today are strictly about on-site owners. On-site owners and their properties are distinctly different than investment homes. These owners who qualify for the 4% property county tax homestead exemptions on a portion of their home parcel, and these owners short-term rent a portion of their homestead, like the gentleman who spoke earlier. Here are my 4 suggestions regarding owner-occupied properties. These should require only 1 permit, not 2. Should be issued per property tax ID on a parcel. 2, on-site owners should pay a $250 permit fee. 3, investment homes should pay the $500 permit fee. 4, remove all owner-occupied properties from the cap. There are 3 categories of on-site owners. Number 1, owners who live on site and have a permit to short-term rental, the ADU, while living in the main structure. Number 2, owners who live on site and have a permit to short-term rent the main structure while living in the ADU. And number 3, owners who live on site and have a permit to short-term rent up to 6 bedrooms in their home. Some of these owners have 1 permit and some hold 2 permits on a parcel on a tax ID. Staff can explain that to you. Based on these 3 categories, there's no reason to require that an issued permit is valid only for the ADU or that an issued permit is valid only for the main structure. The owner can legally only rent 1 part at the time anyway, according to the code. So if the current owner has 2 permits and is an on-site owner, the staff doesn't even care which portion of the home is short-term rented. Every short-term permit holder should have the same property rights without holding 2 permits. I'm going to run out of time. I've written it over and over again. I've written details. Please call us in and listen. Don't proceed here. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. Name and address, please. 2.5 minutes.
Hey, Trey Adams, 1336 Parkton Road. So I'm a short-term rental owner, and just the perspective I'm trying to offer is this. The fee increase, my understanding of the fee increase is that it's to press the people who aren't using their permits and get them to use it. And what I'm suggesting is that's trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. And the fellow who spoke earlier, I think, is a great example of the situation there. I don't think there's many other businesses where you tell them how they have to run their business and how much they have to do. And it just feels like we're making up a problem and going out to solve it. And from what I've heard tonight, we got plenty of other stuff to work on. So, if we got to increase it from 250 to 500, that's fine. But 1,500 penalizing 330 owners to push out 70 just seems like an imbalance. So that's all I got. But thanks for everything you do, and appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who did not sign up? Yes, please give name and address, and 2.5 minutes, please.
I'm Alicia Lockwood. I live at 316 Lapwing Lane.
My comment tonight is that I am not in favor of the 72-day versus full-time permits unless planning can unequivocally determine the exact dates and days rented versus host blocked and unavailable. This won't be enforceable. It also creates a substantial additional staff overhead with monitoring, communications, enforcing, and re-permitting. I would rather see the staff focus and remain on their main problem of eliminating illegal operators. I believe the $250 fee is adequate. Staff has not been increased. I don't see why we would have to pay more. We're paying more in our taxes. And I also feel that this whole process would go so much faster and so much easier for everyone if you would allow a task force or whatever you want to call it, let the people with the knowledge and the experience of actually doing it be involved in setting the rules. It would be easier and faster for everyone. Thank you.
All right. Yep. Name, address, 2.5 minutes,
Sure.
please.
Patty Sachs, 837 Bridgetown Pass. I'm in Bell Hall. I'm not going to reiterate all the excellent presentations by other people in my neighborhood. I'm just going to make a few simple comments regarding the absurdity of this project proposed with the overpass and ripping out houses and undermining the integrity of our neighborhood and our lives. It just seems to me that one of the most important things to do is to have vision and to look at things in a way that doesn't seem like the obvious way. Come up with a different solution or an option. Anybody who's traveled, anybody who lives here or goes anywhere knows if you build more roads, you're going to get more traffic, you're going to get more cars, you're going to get more truck. It's not going to alleviate anything. I don't care where you go. Europe, United States, I just got back from LA, what a joke that is. Don't even build this, it's ridiculous. Figure out a different way. Think in a creative way. Certainly, every detail and everything everyone has said here are valid, important points for people, for quality of life, for Mount Pleasant, for our health, for our safety, absolutely. But go for a bigger picture and think. I taught school for 25 years, and every single day in that classroom, that's what we did. How do you solve this problem? What are the other ways you can look at this problem? How can we write about this? How can we think about this? So please stand up for us, as the gentleman said, stand up for the people who live in this city and say, no, come up with another way. Because just building more roads and more traffic and that port, maybe they can computerize better to get their cars in and out faster or their trucks in and out faster. I don't really know. Please, I'm begging you, think outside the box here. We don't just have to build more roads and have more traffic and waste money and time and our safety. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who did not sign up? Yes, sir. Name and address, 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Kurt Bakel. I'm at 388 Tidal Reef Circle in Grassy Creek. I wanted to add to my residents' points here given today. Over the last 3 weeks, I've been recording the decibels as we walk in the morning and use the nice sidewalk that's been put in there. On average, we have 70 decibels of noise on that path, and that's kind of as a first receptor going into our neighborhood. That's the average for virtually every morning I've done it over the last 10 times. We've hit peaks as high as 111 decibels. And 111 decibels, that's when the semis will actually use an engine braking system. And during that system, it just puts noise all the way out the smoke exhaust stack. 111. I mean, I don't pay money to go to a concert that loud, but that's in the front of our neighborhood. And that's what we would experience with that overpass at 17 feet, coming out of the exhaust stack another 8 foot above that, having no mitigation between the trees to absorb that noise. That's what we'll get in the mornings. We hear it today at 4 in the morning when you get the engine braking going down. Most communities already have in place a noise ordinance that disallows engine braking. We don't have that where we're at today, or it's not enforced based on that. So I want you to give some real facts to the numbers that we see today in our neighborhoods of already a background of 70 decibels, but we know that. We live there, we've been there for 18 years now, and we understand that we live next to the highway. But things have changed when you raise and put that overpass for us, and you don't have the trees that are there, and you don't have the mitigations that go through, and you see, peaks of 111 decibels. They might get that tonight at the concert, but I don't want to have that in my home every day. Thank you.
Is there one more? Yes, sir.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dan Stana. I live at 318 Turnstone Street, part of the Tidal Walk community here, obviously about the 526 project. My wife and I bought in Tidal Walk in 2016. We had the fortune of being remote workers, which meant even pre-pandemic, we could choose anywhere we wanted to live. And we chose Mount Pleasant. We chose Mount Pleasant for a reason. There's a sense of community here, there's civic engagement, and there are people here who are really building a vision for the future. We have 2 children, both under the age of 4. This is the home that we chose. This is the home where we raise our children. This is the home where my wife and I work. This is a deeply personal matter to me, to my community members, and as you can see, many of the speakers here today. Even before this project was undertaken, a member of our community had done an independent sound study concerning this, and it had already met the noise abatement requirements from the Federal Highway Administration. In the last 3 years, SCDOT has also undertaken efforts to cut back brush, which they claim was a part of flood management. Doesn't add up. My wife's in flood insurance. It's only made the problem worse. SCDOT has really had it out for this area for some time, it seems. This is a relatively new community. It only began in 2015. If SCDOT had this vision in order to do this, they had the opportunity to purchase this land before all of us purchased our homes. Again, these are our homes. I'm certainly passionate about this, but I think that there's a couple of other things that need to be brought to light here. This proposed sound wall that they're talking about, 25 feet. That's state ordinance or a federal ordinance that it can't exceed that. As a reminder, that ramp, 17 feet. Not a math major, not a statistician, but that's a problem. 8 feet, that doesn't provide any coverage above anybody else who's standing right behind the wall. The impact on emergency services, I can't underscore that enough. These are civic, they're the best of us. They are there to serve us at our worst moments, and we can't make their jobs any more difficult than they already are. I don't know why we would undertake that kind of a thing. Further, there's impact on community resources. There is a recreation center there, there's a school there, there are churches there, there are daycares there. Again, our homes are there. Businesses are there. These are valued members of the community who are being forced to move or to change their business practices on account of something that is being rammed through unnecessarily quickly. Thank you for your time.
All right, if there's no one else for public, yes, ma'am. Please come forward, give name and address. 2.5 minutes, please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Heather Nelson Goldwater. I live at 243 Swallowtail Court. I also have a TV name of Ryan Nelson, and I have represented many different types of businesses and politicians in this town. All I'm going to say is the Leatherman terminal sits there for a reason. It's empty. There's alleged lawsuits happening, so the people can't, they want to put barges to go between our river. We really need to look at that. It's not fair. Listen, I met Hugh, I worked with him. Bless him. He'd be rolling over right now for the fact that the port is starting to implement it where they have more of an ego than our exports and imports. End of story. That Hugh Leatherman terminal was there for a reason, people. All this stuff about, listen, I get it. Neighborhoods, I lived in Bell Hall, I lived in Tidal Walk. I get it. But guess what? All those trucks at 7 a.m., which you're welcome to go into my Twitter and all those other things I have, 7 a.m. Why can't they go to Leatherman? Can someone tell me that? I'm asking a real question. No, because people are scared to get sued. All right? And that's sad for our town. I'm not going to bring up the rest. They all did. Thank you to all those peeps back here. I never wanted to be in this position. I've met many of you before. However, there is a terminal that works, and we need to start using it. Thank you. Somebody left their glasses. Anyone?
All right, if there's no one else, let me clarify for those of you sitting here tonight, there is nothing on our agenda tonight about 526 and Long Point Road, and there's nothing on our agenda tonight about the noise ordinance. And we cannot discuss or even have a conversation about things that are not on our agenda according to law. So if you're in the record, we've heard you tonight. There are subsequent meetings, committee meetings, and all of that. But I just want to let everybody know none of that will be can be discussed or voted on here tonight of those two items. The others, short-term rentals, some of the properties that were addressed, those are on the agenda and we will be addressing those. So just wanted everybody to know that before we proceed with the agenda. Also, since we're going to be having motions and things, I would ask all the council members, since we have this little system with the green lights, if you're not speaking, please turn your green light off because it's limited to the number of people that can speak, and you might be trying to make a motion and we can't hear you. This brings us to item number 7 on our agenda, the consent agenda items. There are no consent agenda items. Item 8, Section 8 is planning, A, new business. Ms. Reed.
Motion to approve item 1.
We have a motion to approve item 1, which is an annexation of 5 parcels of land at the intersection of Rifle Range and Willow Pond. We have a motion to approve. Again, these are all first reading. They require second reading, and there's no amendments on anything at first reading. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion to approve item A1, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is approved unanimously.
First reading, ordinance number 22050.
Item number 2, please.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve rezoning from R1 to community conservation, which is actually more restrictive, and it's appropriate for this one. The motion is to approve. Any further conversation? All in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
First reading, ordinance number 22051.
All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
At the recent of an appearance of any conflict, I'm going to recuse myself from this reading.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
We'll wait for you to exit the dais. Appreciate that and the responsible manner in which it was handled. This is first reading of an ordinance to amend sections of the zoning code pertaining to short-term rentals. Ms. Reed.
Yes, sir. So before you tonight with 4 major changes. First of all, 2 types of permits. We still have a cap of 400. There was originally a proposal to increase the fee to 1,500. That has been changed to 500. And instead of the higher fee, we've set the minimum date. So 15 days to 72 days would be considered a part-term permit, and 72 days and more than that would be a full-time permit at the $500 fee. The annual registration, the original reason we came before you a couple months ago was to clean up the language regarding the cap. The best way we did that was open up an earlier application date. So starting November 15th to December 15th, current STR operators will be able to apply first. Staff will process those, go through those. If there's any left and available as of January 1st, we will start on our wait list, which currently we have about 120 folks sitting and waiting for a permit. We've cleaned up our parking requirements. That was primarily because we get very few complaints. This program runs very smoothly. The few complaints we get outside of illegal operators, which we're going to deal with under civil penalties, deal with parking, on-street parking. So the STR operators aren't providing enough parking. Too many people are bringing their cars, and it's disrupting the neighborhood. Last is civil penalties. We really wanted to address the fact that a lot of our resources are spent going after folks that are operating because they can't get a permit or they choose not to. When you add in staff time, court costs, sending letters, taking them to courts, police, the courts, planning staff, and it was recommended at Planning Committee to add in the civil penalties. And so Mr. Pagliarini has added in a provision from the committee meeting to tonight. So just real quick, I'm going to walk through the major changes. One thing is when you look at this for so long, you use a lot of terms interchangeably. So we've tried to clean that up. We've designated what we call the STR operator. We've defined that, and every time we talk about the person who runs and operates, they are the STR operator. We defined the cap. So when we use that terminology, the cap, we are talking about that 400 number. Here we have the language that opens up the application date for current STR operators. That begins November 15th, again through December, and then we talk about January 1st opening it up if there are any left. One thing that did come out of the commission is the blue text. I know there's concerns, you can revoke their permits, you can do this, you can do that. Jane is very communicative with these folks. She always calls them, talks to them, sends letters, so we are not going to revoke anybody's license. We are going to work with people if there's missing information, but we did increase it to 10 business days. So if you are a current STR operator and we feel like we have an incomplete application, we're going to give you 10 business days, work with you, try to get that. If we can't get it past that date, or if you don't get your application in by December 15th, you go to the back of the line. The 2 permits. This is really to address a couple things. One, so that we don't have to weed out those folks who sit on their permits. We have about 70 to 80 at any given time that have not operated, while we have 120 on the wait list. So I understand the concern about the $500 fee increase, but we felt like it was a reasonable compromise to say, okay, $1,500 may be too much, but with $500 and we limit you to the 15 days. We felt like that was a fair amount. So we have the part-time, which is 15 to 72 days. This will basically be a menu on the application. It'll just be a box that you check. This is not any more burdensome on staff. It's going to be very easy to administer through our software. And essentially what will happen is we can see every time you book, every time you block. Jane can see all of those things through our software. It's very sophisticated. So you will check the box. If you say you're part-time and you pay the $250 fee, she will see that you have rented 73 days, and she will reach out to you and say, okay, you owe us the difference. And from here to the rest of the calendar year, you're considered full-time. You owe us the difference, $250. And then next year, when you reapply, you can either be part-time or full-time. We're not allowing a certain amount of part-time, full-time, because what would happen is if we said only 50 part-time and 350 full-time, that really constrains us. We feel like it's flexible just to keep that 400. You pick what you want to do, and we go from there. Last is the parking. We feel like this is important. We want the STR operator to let their renters know how much space they have and to make sure that they communicate that. So we wanted to, right now when we get these complaints, we don't have any enforcement mechanism because there's nothing in the ordinance. So we wanted something in the ordinance to address that. And last, we have the civil penalties. And so really what we wanted to address was those operating illegally without a permit. So right now and Mr. Pagliarini can speak more to the fact that we're very limited in what we can do with our general penalties. But what we did was add the civil penalties, and it shall not exceed 1,000. So you can be subject to both the general penalties, court costs, imprisonment up to 30 days, and those civil penalties up to $1,000. And so that provision has been added in, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Motion or discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Just a question.
Ms. Corbin.
Thank you, Mayor. Michelle, we had a few residents speak about the passing down to a family member.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak a little bit more to that? Because I don't remember that one.
Yeah, we have had, there's a provision in the ordinance that says the permit upon the conveyance of the property to another owner, the permit does not transfer. And we put that in place, and you wouldn't believe the things we get, and we have to ask David about. People forming LLCs and all kinds of loopholes. And I'm going to let David speak to that real quick. Go ahead.
Thank you. The legal basis is that a permit is for a specific act or person. It doesn't transfer with the land, and it's not transferable. It's a legal permit. It's revocable. And so legal believes it's not appropriate to allow transfer. Council could, but what Michelle's referencing is we spend a significant amount of time, and I use the term schemes not to be insulting, but schemes about, well, what if I create an LLC and we shift the members and it does this, that, and the other, and it really isn't appropriate, and staff believes, legal believes that this is the best way to deal with it, is that the permit does not transfer.
So if it was my house and I owned it and I left it to my daughter, then she could just keep.
The
Never
permit,
mind.
they have to have a new permit.
She'd have to have a new
Right.
permit, okay.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
And to add to that, we saw instances of listing where people are listing properties for sale with the permit advertised as
Oh,
part
wow.
of the listing.
Mhm.
And so we're just
Yeah.
getting into a situation where ad hoc decisions based on these numerous, I say schemes, again, not negatively,
Yeah.
but plans to convey a permit becomes burdensome and unequally applied.
Mr. Parliamentarian, we need a motion, right, to have discussion?
Well, it would be preferred, yes.
I'd move to defer this back to committee.
A motion to defer back to committee. We have a second. All right, now we can have discussion. Ms. Hyatt.
Would it be possible to not allow it to transfer if the property's sold? Is there a way to distinguish as far as
Inherited.
leaving it to somebody versus selling it? So that, because that's really what we're wanting to avoid, people attaching the permit to the home when they sell it, that it would go along with the house. Is there a way to distinguish that legally?
Question back to you, ma'am, is what are the...
Is your microphone on, Mr. Pegler?
Sorry.
There you
The question back to you, ma'am, is what are the exceptions that council would like to see? And we just need to keep in mind the ability to police it and the legality of it, meaning what are we excluding? And if we are excluding or allowing exceptions, are those unfair to other people? So I'm not trying to not answer your question, but we would want to know what it is, the exceptions that you would like to consider, and then we can create something around that is as legal as we can make it.
All right, reminding everybody, the motion is to defer, besides the fact this was first reading and we cannot make amendments. Yes, sir.
First, I do want to thank the staff and the Planning Commission and Planning Committee for all their hard work. Reading through it, the definitions and things that were clarified and some of the just language clarifications make for much easier understanding. However, I do have significant concern with the minimum number of nights. I think the situation that one of our constituents brought up is a good one. I mean, if you have an extra bedroom or you have an ADU and you've used it for a short-term rental for, a number of years, and you have a sick family member or an adult child that needs to use it for a year or two, to me, you should still be able to pay your permit fee and it still be your short-term rental. That just seems like basic fairness. Also, I still don't understand the two different application fees based on an arbitrary number of nights. Someone made a good point. If any business is having a great year and doing a lot more revenue, they're going to pay that through business license fees the next year. I don't understand why we're double dipping them. If I do understand that the reason for the fee to begin with was so that this program was revenue or income neutral, I guess you should say. So we could pay for the staff member to do this program, and those costs If those costs have increased, then we should adjust the base permit fee by the rate of inflation. So if the inflation is high right now, 8% or whatever, that should be the permit fee should be $250 times 1.08, whatever that is. I don't know. But I don't like the idea of picking an arbitrary number of nights and just throwing an extra $250 on there. Seems kind of wild to me. And I agree with both councilwomen that have spoken. I feel like you should be able to pass it on through inheritance to a direct family member. And I'd like to see some, and I know it might not be perfect legally, but I think it's the right thing to do. So those are my points. And I think there's a lot to work on, which is why I made a motion to defer it back to committee. And we had a lot of great comments tonight, so I appreciate everybody coming out.
Others? Okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
for Mr. Jake, I think that the difference is $250 for on-site, right? Am I wrong? No?
No, the numbers weren't arbitrary. They came from how the municipal association laid out the short-term rental guide for 15 days to 72 days. Once you're beyond 72 days, you are considered not site. Because we don't deal with taxes, we don't accept taxes, we use those days to kind of set that parameter. But the average, the 250 would stay the same if you rent part-time, the 15 to 72 days. That was to accommodate the original discussions and what we heard from people that said, we only want to do this a few weekends a year. We didn't want to pull it from them. But we wanted to also, we were hoping we could weed out some of those 70 or 80 that are just sitting on it when you have 120 that would like to do it. And if you're really serious about it, we thought, okay, you would pay the $500 rather than the $1,500 and do it full time. But that's where those numbers came from. And
okay,
yeah,
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So the motion is to defer, and it will go back to the planning committee. I believe your motion did say defer back to the committee, which is where it would go. Is there any other discussion? All in favor of the motion to defer, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimous. What's that? Was that no?
No.
Okay, it was not unanimous. All right. So with one recusal and one no, the motion passes. All right. Item number 4, and please note, this is discussion only. There can be no motions and no vote to comply with the law regarding the town's current residential density in commercial districts. So given that this is open-ended, we don't need a motion and we don't need a vote. We could be here all night sharing our feelings and emotions on this. I don't think anybody wants that. I have a few things to say, especially from a poignant meeting that occurred this week regionally. But Ms. Reed, is this something you're looking at me like I'm supposed to throw it to you? Am I supposed to throw it to the committee? I believe this came from the planning committee.
It came from the planning commission, really. Just real briefly, it was at the committee level. It didn't go any further, and then Mr. Rambo had requested that it go to the commission for further discussion. We actually took it twice to the commission. They wanted us to come back the following month with more examples, kind of visualizing density. What does 12 units an acre look like, and that sort of thing. So I just have 2 slides for you here. One is the provision we're talking about, which has been in place well over 20 years. In the commercial districts, limited office, office professional, neighborhood commercial, area-wide business, and area-wide business too. It is a conditional use that you can do residential based on 3 conditions. No dwelling unit is located on the street level. All dwelling units have direct access to the street level, and density shall not exceed 12 units an acre. This had totally separate from the Boulevard Overlay District, the urban corridor. This is on any commercial property. It's been in place over 20 years, and we've had one development actually develop under this, not being in the overlay, and that was Shellmore Village, and they developed at 11.15 units an acre. It's a live-work development. And so we took it to the commission. We talked about it for 2 months. We talked about different examples. And of course, we also talked about affordable housing, workforce housing, and the middle missing housing, those sorts of things. So I actually have 2 sort of recommendations to bring to you tonight. One is from the commission, and then one came from the committee discussion last week. The first was the commission felt like in red at the top should be changed. If you're providing workforce housing, then the density could stay at 12 units an acre. If you're not providing workforce housing, they recommended it be 2 units an acre. Planning committee had a different recommendation. They wanted to do sort of an incentive bonus, almost density. So how they worded it was density shall not exceed 4 units an acre. However, if you choose to do workforce housing, you may go up to 8 units, those additional 4 being workforce housing. So in the first example, it's all or nothing. Basically, it's 100%. If you're going to do 12 units an acre, it's 100% workforce housing. In the planning committee recommendation, it would be 50% workforce housing. And so that's kind of what I'm going to present to you for discussion and wait for further direction.
Dangerous thing with a deliberative body. Just keep in mind, we're not voting on anything tonight. Let's share some thoughts and then decide where to go from here. Yes, sir. Mr. Microphone.
So this has been on the books for 20 years. We have one example in the entire town, and that's been built for many, many years. And they have 11.2, and I think to me, Shelmore Village is one of the best examples of community that we want in the town. It's got stores on the bottom, residential on the top. It's the epitome it's what we want in community. Is this a solution to a problem that doesn't exist? I don't understand why we're going after this, is what I'm very confused about, because, yes, please, because I don't understand.
So in
Ms. Whitley? Yes.
Is it all right?
Yeah, go for it.
So in our comprehensive plan, one of the things that is in there is a focus on workforce housing and the desire to increase that number of workforce housing. Unfortunately, the state of South Carolina does not allow inclusionary zoning, so we cannot require a developer to put in a certain percentage of workforce housing into their developments. But what we can do is incentivize the creation of workforce housing. So by the planning committee's recommendation of reducing the units per acre down to 4 of normal, not workforce housing, but then they get sort of an additional density, doubling the density to 8 if those additional 4 units per acre are dedicated to workforce. That gives the developer an opportunity to have a financially viable project to bring affordable housing and regular, but they have the regular housing as well, but then also fulfills the town's comprehensive plan of trying to have some units dedicated to workforce housing. And the reason for dropping down from 12 units down to 8 is because of the burden that additional housing units are going to place on the infrastructure of the town of Mount Pleasant. Our schools are already at capacity. There already is talk of rezoning in multiple schools within and bringing trailers into Lucy Beckham, and with the bringing in of additional units, onboarding units to the town of Mount Pleasant, we didn't want to bring in so many that we were going to create additional problems for our roads and for our schools.
I'm sorry.
Hang on. Yes, sir.
I voted against this on the planning committee, and the reason I did is because 4 units per acre is single-family housing. This is not for single-family housing. This is for having the ability to live where you work, the ability to live where you want to do things for recreation. The whole point of this particular section within our zoning code allows for a more unsanitized community. It's the ability to live where you work. And I will tell you, 4 units per acre single family creates over 11 to 12 vehicles per day. So if you're talking about traffic, you're creating traffic by putting the number at single-family housing. multifamily housing has much less traffic from it because of the number of bedrooms and the like. So I was against this in planning committee, and we're not voting tonight, but I'm just
Yes,
giving my thoughts.
we're not voting. Did you have a hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree with what John was talking about Shellmore Village. They actually have 3 stories, and so the commercial is at the bottom, and a lot of them have an office on the middle floor, and then the top floor they have where they live, their apartments. So actually, somebody can, shop there, work there, and live there, and never really have to even leave, except maybe to go somewhere else. So I think Shellmore is a perfect example of how we ought to do it.
Yes, sir, Mr. Rambo.
So I think Ms. Whitley spoke it very eloquently, but just out of curiosity, I searched today just 1-bedroom apartments in Mount Pleasant. They are going for ridiculous amounts of money. I mean, it is unreal what it takes. Double what my wife and I, when we first got married, did. And that was only 12 or 13, 14 something years ago. Anyway, and so the purpose of this, in my opinion, is to disincentivize just full-on housing, dense housing, but incentivize, if we are going to have that level of density, let's have it so it's serving the workforce that cannot afford to be here. And our kids, I mean, it's the one thing I tell people on council that keeps me up at night is that I don't know that my kids will ever be able to afford to live here. And that's sad.
Yes, ma'am. Inside.
During economic development, we had the director of Charleston County Housing and Neighborhood Revitalization speak, and he explained that we have a shortage of all types of housing, not just workforce. So this is why we had the idea of, we don't want it to be just 2 an acre. It should be at least 4 as far as the commission's recommendations, because there is the middle niche that's still missing, not just affordable housing. He even said we're missing, the top multi-million-dollar homes, that those folks are coming in and buying up the middle inventory. And so then our middle-class workers can't afford to live here either. So we've all got a problem. But anyway, we do have a moratorium in place. And when you're asking why this is coming up now, it's like we need to make a decision of what density is appropriate so that we can remove the moratorium and move forward with multifamily. This is not single-family. This is commercial, mixed use. And I do like what you described as far as retail on the bottom, office in the middle, and residential on the top. But if you make residential too dense, then you get retail on the bottom and the rest residential. So to me, having a reasonable number of density is going to encourage that middle commercial and not turn everything into residential. I mean, this is for mixed use. You can't have the entrance on the ground floor. So this is not like single-family homes. This is apartments, basically. And if you make it a little less dense residentially, then you're going to get more commercial development, because they could do 3 or 4 stories. And, if we let it be too dense, they'll only do 1 story of commercial and 3 stories of residential. And then they don't worry about whether they even lease the commercial, because they make all their money off of all that residential. So anyways, we're just trying to come to what's reasonable, what can Mount Pleasant handle, our schools, our roads, our beaches, and get the right number and move forward and be done with it, so people can come in here and start doing some development and know what the rules are.
Yep. Yes, sir. Mr. Ike.
Just a couple of things. One, I have 2 questions, so I'm just going to talk for once. Don't we have zoning and the comp plan that's going to stop all this from all this growth and density? Like, we're adding another, have we allowed the comp plan to work itself out? And don't we have zoning that's going to stop this kind of the density that we're talking about? And we can answer that in a second. Second of all, I don't know any business that wants to build retail on the bottom and residential on top just to fool us and have empty storefronts. Just because there's empty storefronts in some places, you know, we are coming out of the pandemic right now. I don't think that Shellmore or what is that one over by, on the way to Sullivan's Island, they have some empty retail on the bottom, but I don't believe that they built that retail in order to trick us on the residential to leave the retail empty in order to not rent it. We all, you know, if you're in business to make money and to pay the bills. So, and also I don't understand, so we're incentivizing workforce housing by taking away the property rights of people. I'm confused. So we're saying, hey, we're taking away your property rights, but here you go, here's a carrot, we want you to build workforce housing. So that's the way I'm hearing it. So I'll silence myself now. Thank you, Chairman.
Let me just add, I believe the wording in our economic development strategic plan, the whole region has shifted to attainable as opposed to workforce. Workforce kind of has a connotation that it's for a certain industry or certain sector of the economy. It's not demographically referring to the people that would live there, but the type of work that it might be. So attainable is, I'd like for us to use, you know, going forward. I know the One Region Committee, this is a big thing. And what I wanted to share, and I think everybody has spoken, we can move on, but another eye-opening thing for me was last Thursday, we had the Federal Executives Association meeting. That's the heads of Joint Base Charleston, the Nuclear Power School, the Coast Guard, the Air Force Wings, the head of the Air Force Base, the Passport Agency, which, by the way, has 150 job openings right now, federal jobs. I would say, and the mayors of every place from the Isle of Palms to Goose Creek and everywhere in between, Charleston, James Island, everywhere. The vast majority of the conversation was about attainable housing. And they were pleading with us to find ways to get it in our communities because it is becoming a bigger problem in some cases than mobilizing for war, which is a big problem, is finding housing for all the military that make up our community. And as somebody that got in, years ago on the battle to preserve the character of our community, it occurred to me listening to them by not having attainable housing. And I don't know what the right number is. I'm not going to play around with the numbers. But if we don't have coaches and teachers and military, you know, in the 60s when I lived on Cottingham Drive, half our street was military. And I'm talking about junior officers. And now they can't live anywhere near Mount Pleasant, and we're missing something there. So I think that by finding the way to get this in there, and this is another reason I have a standing meeting the Monday before our council meetings with Denise Fugo of Housing for All Mount Pleasant, is to keep this issue on the front burner because, and I'm a late convert to this, I'll be the first to tell you, is that by just becoming exclusive and expensive and with no first responders and no teachers and no coaches and no military, we in fact are not maintaining the Mount Pleasant that we grew up with and we know and we love. So let's find a way to do that and not view attainable housing the way we view, and Jake, I know you're right, it blew my mind. I looked at some apartments near me and they were $4,000 or $5,000 a month. And that's a shame. So I hope we can go forward with that in mind of maintaining the character of Mount Pleasant by providing attainable housing or finding ways for it to be provided. Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to address Mr. Ecafano's question. So the comprehensive plan is just a guide. It doesn't magically like enact itself. So we have to implement it through changes to our code. We are in the middle of a zoning code overhaul, but that's a long-term thing that's going to take another year. I think we're at the point they're addressing each section of the code, they're revising as they go, but there are certain things that we need to do now, I think. And one of them is address this issue because we are coming up to the end of our moratorium on multifamily housing. And this isn't taking away property rights. It's creating an incentive to achieve that density that they want and achieve the attainable housing that we want. So I think this is definitely open for more discussion, and I look forward to that discussion. But maybe 8 units is too few. Maybe 11.15 is that we have an example of that community. But what I worry if it's all attainable housing, I've had developers flat out tell me that that does not make economic sense to them to build at all. So I think having a mix of housing is going to be more of an incentive to achieve the kind of development that we want in our community.
And let me ask, so we can wind this up, as chair of the planning committee, is this something that y'all plan to put on your agenda soon or maybe in 60 days? I know that groups like the military, like the federal executives and all, they would like to come talk to us about this. So I don't know that they can be here, Monday, 3 weeks from now.
Yeah, this was on our agenda this past month, and I'm happy to take it up again next month. I don't think this is something that we want to sit on.
Okay, all right.
Mayor, just
Yes, ma'am.
one last thing. Oh, go
ahead.
ahead.
No.
You sure? Just because we're talking about Shellmore, you guys don't forget that Shellmore is a hub. So this discussion is on commercial, right? Okay.
Ms. Hyatt, we'll just go this way. Ms. Hyatt?
That's what I was going to add, that we still have our redevelopment hubs, and they have recommendations for being, 30% affordable. So this is only really affecting our linear business areas, because the hubs are going to encourage workforce housing or attainable housing. And I was not saying people build commercial, to fake us out. What I said was they are less concerned about making sure it's leased, because they're making enough money on the apartments, and we want to make sure everything's leased and businesses are in business in town. So it's just, they aren't, when they charge the rents that they do, they're not as incentivized to really push getting it leased. That's all.
Mr. Rambo, did you have one more comment?
I did. I just had a procedural question. I guess, to Ms. Whitley's point, I don't think this is something that we should just sit on. Planning committee first discussed it 6 months or so ago. It was in committee for a couple of months, then it was brought to council, sent back to commission for 2 months, back to committee, now it's back to council. I think we should send it to planning commission for a public hearing. But I don't know if there's action that can be taken when it says discussion.
Not tonight, sir. I think if I'm understanding the planning committee, it was to go back to planning committee after the input tonight. And
Okay,
the planning
understood.
committee would then refer it to planning commission for a public hearing.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Can I make one
Y'all
last
ready to
thing?
move on?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I made the motion, and my intent was not just discussion. It was to move this forward. So I don't know how it got to be just discussion, but anyway. Okay, we'll do that another month.
I know.
One
we're
more
gonna
and
get
let's
out.
move
That's
on.
it, and I'm done. If we can maybe not use the word, so we're telling people we're going to decrease the units in your house by incentivizing you to put up workforce housing. We might not want to use the word incentivizing. You're actually decreasing the property rights of the person and using the word, but I'm incentivizing you to put workforce housing on at a lower rate with what's the incentive, I guess is what I'm saying. I would be saying, what incentive are you giving me? So we might not want to use the word incentivizing by saying you're going from 12 units to 4 or 8 units with an incentive of no incentive. So there is no incentive. But thank you.
Okay, all right, let's move on. Item number 5, approval of impact assessment and associated conceptual plan. And before we get started, does that need to be 2 motions?
Sir, they can be taken together. Please note that council does have the ability to put conditions on the conceptual plan. So if there are, then 2 motions, separate motions would be more appropriate.
Okay. As chair, just my opinion, I would prefer 2 separate motions when we get to that standpoint. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve 5.
Mayor,
Motion to
before
approve.
you have a motion, would you let her explain what happened in committee? Because there's some
Sure,
additions
go ahead.
that came out of committee.
Yes, sir. Thank you. There were a few conditions that came, and I'll get straight to it, unless you want me to talk about what the project is. Is everybody up to speed? Essentially, we have an 8.5 acre parcel. These are all permitted uses. This, again, is an impact assessment, so we're looking at things like transportation and drainage and those sorts of things. It has went through all of our review process. Staff is pleased and approved everything at the staff level. They will have underground storage, detention, transportation. They will have to get an encroachment permit from SCDOT. They will be required to put a decel lane in. We're going to have a 50-foot buffer along Highway 17, a 25-foot buffer at the rear, and then 10-foot on both sides. It's going to be a Spinks gas station at the front with a car wash, and in the back is going to be retail comprised of 3 parcels. 3 things real quick, and then I'll talk about the conditions that came from commission and committee. First, as we talked about LID stuff and putting these environmental guidelines in, a developer agreed to put in this 20-foot buffer between the gas station and the retail a bioswale. So they will install a bioswale in that 20-foot buffer. And that will basically separate the retail from the gas station. Let's talk about connectivity real quick. There's already a stub out from Home Depot, and they will connect to Home Depot. We've also been contacted by Christchurch Episcopal. They would like to provide a future connection too, so the developer has agreed, and that was a condition, to provide a stub out to Christchurch. We don't have an exact location yet. That would happen during the design process. And that's what this would look like. This is really going to be incredibly important with Ed Von Key and the Long Point Road extension coming on. So you think about Sundays for church, letting out the traffic. Instead of going out, taking a right, and having to do a U-turn on 17, they would be able to come down through that connection and hit 6 Mile and then go out and hit the light. So we're really excited about that possible connection, and they have agreed to put a stub out, and we'll work with Christchurch as they move forward with their plans. Last, a gas station is a conditional use on AB2 property. The conditional use requirements are very simple. They've met them all. One thing, though, that was asked and the developer has agreed to, with maybe a slight modification, is that you're required to have a buffer. The buffer between the subject property and the Christchurch Cemetery. It was originally, typically what would happen is you would not have a fence. The condition was that you add an 8-foot wood stockade fence. Further, there was a condition that the fence would be on the side of the cemetery on the side of the development with the buffer facing the cemetery. In further talks, we think it might be better, and these are things that we're going to work at through the design review, but we think it would be better if there was some sort of modification where the fence maybe straddles the buffer, so you have some buffering on both sides of the fence. So that's one of the conditions. So what we came out of with commission and then committee was that the developer would include a bioswale in that 20-foot buffer. In addition to the vehicular connection to Home Depot, they would install a stub out to the adjacent Christchurch. That would be for future connectivity. The developer shall install an 8-foot wood stockade fence with masonry piers in addition to the type B 10-foot buffer along the Christchurch. And then the buffer along the property line shared with Primus Tract, that's already required to have a fence and a 25-foot buffer. There was also a request that perhaps the fence could split that buffer as well. So you would have some buffering on both sides. And that's what we have before you tonight with those conditions that were brought to you. And I'm happy to answer questions.
Before we proceed, let me ask not procedural, but a legal question. For the life of me, I cannot remember when Richard's Bar and Grill was annexed into the town. I know it used to be county because you could smoke cigarettes in there.
2019.
2019?
Yes, sir. Sawgrass moved to Mount Pleasant in 1990. The Holiday property was annexed in 2011 and zoned AB2. Richards was annexed and zoned AB2 in 2019.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, of course, Richards has been demolished. Sawgrass, they tried to work it out where they could stay on site. They have since moved over to the Wando Park Industrial Park off Long Point Road. So the plan is to demolish that Sawgrass Technology building, start new. So, yep.
Another just technical question. There's a big billboard there. That in the county or in the town now?
We talked about that. That's in the county. Yes, it's in the county.
It's its own parcel.
It is its own parcel, and we've talked about the fact that if they incorporate that into this development, there would be, we would come into the whole 50% thing. That's, I don't want to go too far into that, but
But we have
you're
different
correct.
rules. We have rules against digital billboards. The county may or may not. I don't know what they do now, but they may change them. But that's a concern of mine is that billboard and how any of this might facilitate a huge change or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So do we know, is it part of this development or not?
It's not proposed to be part of the development, but it's my understanding that if nothing changes on that parcel where that billboard is, then nothing would change. If they decide to change anything with the property lines, and we've communicated that with the developer, and it's my understanding that it's to stay where it is, but I don't know. That's something we would have to deal with if they decide to incorporate that and change those lot lines.
Does the same developer own it?
Yeah.
Own the billboard? That would be nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tracy Dalek, introduced myself in public comment. But the billboard was annexed into the town in 2019. It's part of the 233 parcel. And yes, it is all under the same ownership. It is currently governed by a lease, and it is in the process of being transitioned into an easement. But it is part of the town of Mount Pleasant.
The billboard is now in the town as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
There was one other question was, there's no proposed changes to the billboard at all. It would just remain.
Mr. Paglerini? Are you okay?
David? Got 2 more hours to go.
And Mr. Mayor, you would like the impact assessment and conceptual plan as separate motions?
From experience, I think those are easier if they're 2 different votes.
Do they require 2 readings?
Mayor, I'll move for the conceptual plan as presented with all the revisions to be
Second.
approved.
Okay. The motion is to approve the conceptual plan as presented, which includes the conditions that were put on there. And we have a second.
Procedural
So
question.
we're in discussion.
That's a procedural question. Does this require 2 readings, or is this a 1 reading deal?
This is one reading.
Impact assessment and conceptual plan are both
Correct,
1
sir.
reading.
That's correct.
Okay.
As a point as well, will we be getting numbers on the impact assessment? Is that the next thing you're going to?
No.
Who
as-
gives us the impact assessment? In terms of traffic, right? Traffic impact or no?
Yeah, it's been reviewed. Our transportation department's been reviewing it with their transportation engineer, and everything has been acceptable. And James isn't here tonight, but it's all been reviewed and approved as far as traffic.
You mean recommended approval, right? I mean, we have to vote?
Right, correct.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we have a motion to approve the conceptual plan as presented with the conditions that were stated. We have a second. We are in discussion. I, for one, have some questions. Can we go back to how a gas station is a conditional use?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Those conditions have to be what?
So the site, it talks about screening and buffering requirements to be determined through the planning process. The applicant has coordinated with staff. It's very minimal. It's basically the buffering. And the zoning administrator has determined that those are all in place. So it's a conditional use is reviewed and approved by staff. We can't apply anything extra, but what came out of that was an addition of the 8-foot wood stockade fence in addition to the buffer. Adjacent to the cemetery.
Okay. Since I'm the chair, I have to ask, does anybody else want to be recognized? I can't just commandeer the discussion. I will just say where I'm going with this. I remember last year or a few months ago, Mr. Chapman, I believe you kind of led the discussion. Remember the area where the tennis facility was going to go up in North Mount Pleasant near Ivy Hall? And then, and it was approved, brought in the town, approved as one thing, and then it became another. And I believe the majority of council, I think it was a split vote, but it did pass, I believe, to deny, because we didn't feel like a car dealership fit that part of town, and we had the right to vote on that. I have lost a lot of sleep over this one, because I just, that church and that graveyard are two of the most just some of the most picturesque area we have in Mount Pleasant. And I'm just having trouble seeing a big old gas station, what was it, a Spinks gas station or whatever, right there as you come up the way. And if I have the right, Mr. Pagliarini, to vote no, I intend to vote no, because I just don't think that putting a gas station like that with lights and pavilions and all that next to one of the most historic visible churches and cemeteries in the character of Mount Pleasant is preserving the character of the community that I pledged myself to do. So I intend to vote no. Anyone else want to be recognized? Yes, ma'am.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. This property is zoned AB2, which is,
Correct.
Step beyond AB. And I think, this is well within the uses of the property. I think we are in a period of the town where it is ripe for redevelopment, and we need new things there. And I think the backside of it with the retail is going to be great. The connectivity is great. And I think, it's right along the highway. Why not a gas station? And why not the retail behind it? Something new for the community and new businesses brought in and supported. So I think, it's zoned AB2, and they're meeting the conditions of the buffer. So I guess I just don't have an issue with that development.
Okay. Yes, sir, Mr. Icafano.
Oh, you were first, actually.
I understand, Mayor, your concern.
Can you hit your
Of
button?
course,
Yeah.
of course. I understand the concerns about the nature of the church property. My question is, has the church been involved in these discussions? Am I understanding that they're okay with the buffer, or there's been discussion? Can you tell us anything the church is?
Well, staff have been in discussions with them regarding the connectivity, which they are in favor of and offered up. They reached out to us, actually, and there are some changes taking place in the church. I think September the diocese takes over, and they are going to reach back out to us, but they are very much in favor of having that connection. I don't know that we've specifically discussed the buffer or not. It's the required buffer. Requiring anything above and beyond that is, I think, outside of our purview. But they're very much in favor of connecting to this property and across Home Depot.
See, I understand they're in favor of connectivity. They understand what comes with that connectivity, meaning the gas station and what the mayor's talking about, the lights and that type of thing right next to the cemetery. They understand the scope of this project. Okay.
Yeah, and all of those things will be looked at through the DRB process. Just to kind of give you a visual of where we're at now, we're here, and there's going to be a lot more review to make this, meet all the DRB requirements, commercial design review of requirements, buffering. But yes.
But this is our only vote. And if I may clarify, and you still have the floor.
Yes, sir.
The courts just awarded the church to the Episcopal Diocese of the Episcopal Church of the United States. So the congregation that had been there is now meeting at Jenny Moore, and that's not our battle or our discussion, but you might get a different opinion from those who were there for years and years and years from those who now have the keys.
My only other question, and just for my benefit and for the record, is if a gas station is not approved, what are just some examples of what else could go there that could still maybe have that same type of impact, on that cemetery or on next to a church?
AB2 is our most intense business district. gas station, the car wash, anything with some outdoor storage, like a automotive repair with outdoor storage or sales of vehicles would require one more step, a special exception to the Board of Zoning Appeals. A storage facility, I believe, is a conditional use here, but yeah, and anything below that, A, B, N, C, restaurants, drive-throughs, yeah,
I appreciate
would be a
it.
permitted use.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Yes, sir. Ms. Samuels.
Let me ask you, can we require low-level lighting there, or at least approach them about having low-level lighting in that area? I'm just asking.
That's a design issue. I believe it would have to, I don't know the standard as we sit here. If you're asking the question, can this body tonight, the only issues before tonight are the impact assessment and the conceptual plan. So the answer is not tonight, but
Okay.
we'll review that.
These
for guidelines.
these gentlemen that are sitting in the audience right there, would y'all be okay with doing that? At that area there where the mayor was talking about by the cemetery?
Be happy to look at it. It is a high traffic area. It would need to be appropriately lit. But be happy to look at it. And we've been in touch with Christ Church over the past few months, the past and now the new, and we have been trying to work with them. We're very respectful of the whole historic church and trying to create as much buffer and separation from that church as possible.
Okay.
And trying to work with them in ways to connect as well. So we'd be happy to look at at lighting, but I don't know what would be appropriate.
Thank you.
All right. Any other? Yes, ma'am. Ms.
I
Hyatt.
would just say that I shared your concerns during committee, but when they said it's an allowed use and they discussed the buffer, I was hoping that it would be, in consideration with the church and the fact that they wanted the connectivity. So that kind of swayed my decision, but really, I don't feel comfortable with the gas station in that place next to that cemetery.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, sir, Ms. Microphone.
I don't know at what point we're allowed to continue to take away rights of AB2 zoning from people. So, I mean, I'm okay with the gas station. It's not backed up to a neighborhood. It is right on a main thoroughfare that maybe a couple Tesla superchargers in there wouldn't hurt, but and I think maybe directional lighting is probably maybe the word you might have been looking for is directional lighting. So it's AB2, it's a gas station, and it's zoned for it. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments?
Yes, sir, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I share your concern about a service station near a church, but it appears the church is willing to go along with this, number one. And number two, what could be worse than Richard's sitting right next to the church?
I understand that. Yeah, I get it. But this is our chance to correct that. We didn't create that issue.
That was cool.
And there was a dollar bill with my name on it on that ceiling, and I didn't get a chance to get it back either.
I call for the motion, Mayor. Call for a vote on the
Yes,
motion.
Second.
All right. So the motion is to approve the conceptual plan as presented with the conditions. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. So by 8-1, the motion passes.
Motion to approve the impact assessment.
Second.
All right, now the motion is to approve the impact assessment. May I ask what the factors of that impact assessment are?
Predominantly the traffic improvements and the traffic counts. That's why we're doing it. An impact assessment, they have to provide the numbers based on the 40,000 square foot of retail and the peak hour trips. So they've accounted for that. There are currently 2 entrances off of Highway 17. Those will be eliminated, and there will be 1 entrance, as you can see in the corner here. And they will be required to install a decel lane. They will be doing underground detention. So predominantly, we're looking at drainage, and those things are going to continue to be looked at through our technical review process. But it met all of our staff requirements based on the numbers they provided.
So let me just ask a technical question. I guess, Mr. Pagliarini, once this is voted on, if the impact assessment passes, council doesn't get a look at those things. Those get approved by staff down the way. We don't get to come back and say, wait, or whatever, right?
Correct, sir. This would be the entirety of council decision. It would go to staff and any other committee, design, review, and the like for
Okay.
all the technical issues.
Okay. All right, so I believe we had a motion in a second. Yes, we did. If nobody else wants to be recognized, I'm going to be consistent on this. I'm not at all comfortable with this. I think it's the wrong thing at the wrong place. I used to live right across the street from there. I don't anymore, so there's no conflict of interest, but I lived there for 5 years. You got 6 Mile Road traffic coming out. You got light there. You got the turn on Long Point Road there. I can't imagine a higher traffic generator than a gas station, more cars pulling on and off. So I intend to just be consistent and be the no vote again. All right, so the motion is to approve the impact assessment. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. So by 8-1 again, the motion passes. All right, item B, old business. There are no planning old business items. Item 9, section 9, bids and purchases committee.
Move to approve.
Second.
And the chairman has to read something from the committee. We have a motion and a second.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Town of Mount Pleasant was awarded a grant to provide funding to allow the town to refurbish the fire department's marine firefighting boat, M501, in the amount of $120,000 with the required match of $40,000 for a total project budget of $160,000. So as such, I move that council accept this grant award.
All right, and we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Council new business. We're in section 10. Item A, action to establish millage rate and sales tax credit factor.
approve.
We have a motion from the chair of the
Second.
Finance Committee to approve. Do we need to divulge numbers?
I can.
Okay, for the record,
For every
please.
property owner who owns $100,000 in value, they will get $15 back on their taxes. That's the short of it.
You
For
get
the
to
loss credit.
You get to be the ice cream man tonight. Everybody else, yeah, I mean, you just throwing it out there. That's great.
And
You deserve it.
that and the millage rate stayed the same.
Yes, the millage rate stayed the same. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion is approved. Item number 2.
Move to approve.
This is a first reading of an ordinance, and we have a motion to approve. This has to do with what we had the public hearing about. The first part, we are not changing our fees. We are changing the index or whatever it was called.
Correct.
Second.
According to the national standards.
Yes.
You move to approve, right, Jake?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Second.
ma'am.
And a second. Any further discussion? All in
Only-
favor, please say
Only
aye.
to say that I'm a life member of ITE.
I am glad you are. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. There
First
is
reading.
no council old business. Item C is executive session. We would be going into executive session for legal and contractual to get legal advice related to the possible settlement of condemnation actions entitled Town of Mount Pleasant versus the Episcopal Church of the Parish of Christ Church. This has to do with road right-of-way and our threshold of accepting 10% above an appraisal. Item B is discussion of Faison Road request for proposals, and just parenthetically, there are very strict guidelines about what can and cannot be discussed in executive session on that, and we will adhere to those with our lawyer's advice. And 2 is personnel consideration of applications to serve on the Planning Commission. Do we have a motion to go into executive session for those reasons?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion second. Any discussion? Let me read. Council may take action on any item, including any subsection of any section listed on an executive session agenda or discussed in an executive session during a properly noticed meeting, which this is. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, we are in executive session. We'll do the motions in the order of the agenda items.
Someone probably didn't bring their key with them.
Oh, Carl, you want to see? Is there any banging on the door? No, there they are. And council members, we will have the motions and the vote in the order listed on the agenda, please. So, Ms. Whitley, I believe you have the first motion.
On item number 1A, I move to approve the settlement of condemnation actions as stated in the agenda.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve as stated, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, please, on Faison Road.
I'd like to move to defer this discussion until next month's meeting.
We have a motion and a second to defer. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No.
How many noes do we have? We have 3 noes. Okay. So by 6-3, the motion to defer passes. All right. Application for appointment to the Planning Commission.
I would like to move to appoint Garrett Lacey.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Lacey is appointed. Thank you all very much. The next item on our agenda is to adjourn. There being no further business before this council, we stand adjourned.